welcome for all of you who are watching. You're tuned into TMH as we present you our daily English news. Our headlines for today include the AU high-level panel delegation arriving in Tigray, Maqala city for peace deal evaluation. Debretsion says genocide is still going on in parts of Tigray, Ethiopia. And Deutsche Welle reports gloomy prospects for the Horn of Africa in the year of 2023. As we move on to our main updates for today, AU negotiations led by Chief Obasanjo and Uhuru Kenyatta finally arrived in Tigray region for a peace deal evaluation. The AU high-level panel delegation today landed in the capital of Ethiopia's Tigray region, Maqala, for a meeting set to evaluate the Tigray peace deal. This deal, the Permanent Cessation of Hostilities Agreement, was signed on the 2nd of November between the Ethiopian government and Tigray's leadership. On the 7th of November, the African Union Commission convened the first senior commanders meeting following the signing, and the meeting was aimed at inducing modalities for silencing guns, humanitarian access, and the restoration of services within the Tigray region. Uhuru expressed hope and confidence that the AU negotiators will achieve its duty and restore normalcy back to the region. Let's take a listen.
We have been inching closer and closer. We started in Pretoria. We promised ourselves we would meet in Nairobi. We said we would meet in Mekele. And I look forward to that final meeting in Addis Ababa, where Ethiopians will take full control over their affairs and ensure that a peaceful, lasting solution is found that shall result in never again seeing the blood of the people of this great land being shed when we can find political solutions to those problems.
This conflict between the Ethiopian government and its allies on one hand and the Tigray forces on the other began in November of 2020 after months of tension that has destroyed so many lives and livelihoods as well. There are around 5.2 million people in the need of humanitarian assistance currently in the Tigray region, including 3.8 million who need health care, as the World Health Organization said. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed, with allegations of serious human rights violations that have been committed thus far. Tears and prayers as flights resume to Ethiopia's Tigray region. A shutdown of flights and communications for almost 2 years now, once the conflict kept many Tigrayans away from their families. Timnit Bayru has details from Al Jazeera.
Kassai Hailu sobbed, smiled, and said prayers as he stood outside Addis Ababa airport preparing to board a plane home to Ethiopia's war-torn Tigray region. She traveled to Addis Ababa in 2020 from Maqala, Tigray's capital, to help her daughter prepare for a school exam. Weeks after her arrival in November that year, a conflict erupted between the federal government and the Tigray's People Liberation Front, the party that dominates the northern region. A shutdown in communications for much of the 2-year conflict means Kassai, like millions of other Tigrayans, has not spoken to her family in more than 18 months. As soon as she lands in Maqala, she said she will head straight to her family home, hoping everyone is still there and safe. The federal government and the TPLF signed a peace agreement last month, which includes the restoration of services to Tigray, and the resumption of flights on Wednesday is the latest in that process. When I heard of the news of the flights, I fell to the ground and cried, 40-year-old Kassai said. She's traveling home with her brother's sister and 15-year-old daughter. I came here for my daughter's examination and got stuck here suddenly, she said, standing next to her luggage bursting with grains and cooking oil. The conflict has created famine-like conditions for much of Tigray's population, displaced millions of people across northern Ethiopia, and killed thousands. I lived here, separated from my husband and child whom I love, Kassai said. I pray the peace will be sustained. When there is peace, there is everything. Ethio Telecom is also reconnected Maqala and 27 other urban areas to internet and telephone services on Wednesday. The state broadcaster ETV reported, citing the company's CEO. Other travelers on the Ethiopian Airlines flight on Wednesday jogged towards the departures terminal, desperate to get on board. The flight sold out within hours of its announcement, and travel agents said. Another traveler, 16-year-old Ngisti Hailemariam, had planned to be in Addis Ababa for 2 weeks to help her daughter give birth. She stayed for nearly 2 years. I am very happy that peace is returning and excited that I am finally going home, she said. May God keep the peace.
Thank you, Timnit, and welcome back. Although flights have resumed, Debretsion says genocide is still going on in parts of Tigray, Ethiopia. President Debretsion disclosed that despite the efforts to restore peace and calmness in the Tigray region, genocide is still going on in some parts of the Tigray region. He noted that there is need to address a number of pending issues for the sake of stability. Garo Online reported that tremendous progress had been made in various parts of Tigray following the peace initiative brokered by the African Union through former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo, as well as his Kenyan counterpart Uhuru Kenyatta, who managed to initiate a ceasefire in Tigray after months of turmoil. The United States and the African Union have been pushing for the exit of the occupational troops who are increasingly engineering discomfort within the region. He says that it is unacceptable that half of Tigray region is peaceful while the other side is still going currently through a genocide on the other side. Western Tigray, parts of northern, western, and eastern Tigray are still under Eritrean troops who have been working at the behest of the Ethiopian government. As we move on to our final update for today, Deutsche Welle reports a gloomy prospect for the Horn of Africa in the year of 2023. Somalia and Ethiopia will be the world's biggest worries in the new year, according to DW. Disastrous governments in these countries will likely lead the region deeper into a crisis. Observers of the Horn of Africa were hardly surprised when the International Rescue Committee sounded the alarm at the end of the year. In 2023, it said the countries most at risk of humanitarian crisis will not be Ukraine, Syria, or Yemen, but in fact it will be Somalia and Ethiopia, as the global aid organization acknowledged. Crisis-ridden Ethiopia could go from bad to worse in 2023, and until November, poverty-stricken Ethiopia had been fighting a 2-year civil war within the Tigray forces, with the estimated 600,000 casualties, and it was most deadliest war in recent history at an expense, one at that, says the Turkish Bayraktar drones ordered by the Ethiopian government for use in the conflict cost between 2.1 and 5.3 million US dollars per single unit. According to its own figures, the country now needs 3.6 billion US dollars for the reconstruction, though actual costs are likely to be considerably higher, while meanwhile, food inflation has also spiked by a staggering 40%. DW says mysterious Eritrea remains strategically important, while the dynamics that will determine the fate of Somalia and Ethiopia in the coming years are relatively clear. Tiny Eritrea, alternately dubbed a hermetic police state or Africa's North Korea, remains to be unknown. The geostrategically important country on the Red Sea is a black box with neither hunger nor COVID statistics available, and according to DW, only one thing seems certain: longtime dictator Isaias Afwerki will continue to wreak havoc in the year of 2023 as his policies seem aimed at achieving the greatest possible chaos within the region. Eritrea's potential role in the devastating civil war in neighboring Ethiopia also shouldn't be underestimated. Since the country is not part of the Pretoria Peace Agreement signed last month, there could be a renewed outbreak of hostilities in the embattled Tigray region next year, with Eritrea's participation further increasing the death toll. There's another player in the region, the reemergence of the Front of the Restoration of the Unity and Democracy, a rebel group against the government of the tiny but strategically important Djibouti, a country that hosts French, American, and Chinese military bases. Doesn't make the situation any easier as well. That concludes our news for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.